I'm Yasmin Gagne, and this is Most Innovative Companies Video Edition. This month, Alien Earth, the first TV show in the Alien franchise, debuted on FX and FX on Hulu. In the series, set far into the future, there are three separate technologies that will influence the future of mankind: cyborgs, AI-enhanced beings, and synthetic beings being downloaded with human consciousness. If that all sounds a little heady and maybe a little familiar if you've read our tech coverage and AI coverage, that's because it is. I spoke with showrunner and creator Noah Hawley about his vision for the show and his approach to creating a series based on iconic IP. You may remember this is not his first time doing it. He's the mind behind Fargo, the hit TV series based on the Coen brothers movie. Here's that conversation. So I want to start by asking you about 26 Keys, which relaunched as an Austin-based production company. Why Austin?
Yes,
And also, how was the first year?
it's been going great. I mean, certainly if production is meaningful, we started off as a runaway train. It feels like. Why Austin? Because I've lived in Austin since about 2008, and coming out of the COVID years, I think my wife and I both decided we really wanted to invest more in community, right? I mean, a lot of us felt so isolated during that time, and I think we really wanted to. Austin is such a hub for. I mean, there's two film festivals and a TV festival. There's the Texas Book Festival, the Texas Tribune, Journalism Politics Festival. Um, you know,
Texas Monthly, you recently had a big glossy profile in it.
yeah, there's UT is here and the LBJ library. Like there's so much there that I found that we could really be a connector to all these different facets of the culture here, which was a great place to kind of build the business. And then obviously we just got this new incentive in Texas Film Incentive, which is very competitive with New York and California. And so it just felt like really the right moment to relaunch from here.
So tell me about kind of building out that community and the sort of, you know, building out this kind of production company, linking all of the things that you just explained. Like, how did you set up your production company to do that?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I always find when I start a new creative project that the hardest thing to do is to be able to communicate the vision for that. What is a Fargo gonna feel like watching it,
Yeah.
right? Like I like to say the script is the best worst blueprint. You can read it, but you're still not gonna know what it sounds like, the actors, what it's gonna feel like. And so the best way for me really to communicate it to you is to make it. And then you go, oh, that's what you meant, right? And so that's sort of what I'm finding here with this company as well, is that I don't really have any comps for it, right? To build something that is both, a sort of for-profit film and production company, but also, not a non-profit officially, but something that is looking to connect these different assets. I mean, I write for The Atlantic. I'm a published novelist. I have these connections, across these different facets of our culture, and to turn into a place where you know we could begin to build some big ideas with the hopes that we can have a real impact, first on the community, and to kind of take the ideas and the that are behind the work itself, right? The decency versus evil of decency versus cynicism of a Fargo, right? And then
Hmm.
how do we turn those values into a community facing value, right? How can we be involved in our community in a way where we're promoting decency over cynicism? Do you know what I mean? Like it's hard to explain on some level, but but it's been really a fun exercise to kind of try to envision it.
Now, you've said when you direct a movie or you run a show, you become the CEO of $100 million corporation. What did you mean by that? In what ways are the two similar?
Well, I mean that's what it is. I mean, in the case of Alien, it's probably twice that. What happens is, I end up writing 8 or 10 scripts that become the blueprint for a production that we mount. In the case of Alien, it was something we shot in entirely in Thailand, right? So, and my biggest call sheet was 750 people, right? So I become the boss, right? Responsible for every decision, and I'm overseeing, the writers, I'm overseeing the production itself, I'm directing, I'm working with the actors, but there's also the whole financial side of it, the budgeting, the logistics, so it becomes this startup in a way that we build from scratch, in this case in a distant location, partnering with a local production company. But it's for me to decide how the company's going to run, right? Because these things, as we know, it's the tone is set at the top, right? if
Hmm.
if if I insist that everyone treats everyone else with respect, then they will. If I'm not a good person, right? Then the company will be filled with people who think they can get away with things, et cetera. So, but at the end of the day, what I'm responsible for to the Disney Corporation is to deliver, the best show possible, as close to the number they've given me as possible.
Now, tell me a little bit about how you approach kind of creating a show. Do you mostly write by yourself? Do you have a writer's room? What does that look like? And how did Alien come to you? Or
Yeah, I mean,
Alien Earth, as Alien is an IP property.
right. Yeah. Well, so yes, I always use a writer's room. I have a kind of love-hate relationship with a writer's room, you know, but I've learned how best to use it to my advantage. I mean,
Well, tell me about the love-hate relationship. What do you
it's a writer's room is a room filled with people with very different brains, and the only common language they speak is plot, right?
Yeah.
This happens, then this happens, then this happens. That's not really how I think about story, right? I think from a character and a thematic standpoint, and certainly with Fargo, which says it's a true story, right? It means that we tell it in a different way. We have elements of randomness and coincidence and all the things that you're not supposed to put into a fictionalized story, that you're like, well, I don't know, that's how it happened, right? So
Fargo is, to use a word that is meaningless, Fargo's a lot of vibes. It's like a very tone heavy piece, if that makes sense.
yeah, and so how can you use a writer's room again to, as I said earlier, there's something that exists in my head that I'm trying to communicate to you. So what I figured out with the writer's room is that the writer's room is a way for me to think out loud, right? But it's a process I have to direct. So, if I have, 4 or 6 writers in a room, you know, I'm going to come in with a story that I want to tell, and I'm going to guide us through that process. And if I can't be in the room tomorrow, what I'm going to say is not, "Well, keep going, breaking the story." I'm going to say something like, well, assimilation as a theme really plays into this season. Why don't you spend the day talking about how it fits into all the different characters and stories? And then we can talk about that. And then we'll pick up where we left off. Because what I don't want to do is to waste anybody's time. There's been, I've been a part of a writer's room where you spend a week breaking a story, and the showrunner comes in, and in 5 minutes, he's like, yeah, 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 I don't want to do any of that, right? But you've wasted a whole week, right?
Yeah.
So I have this motto, which is maximum creativity, maximum efficiency, and I really try to stick to that, which is like, I don't want to waste my time, I don't want to waste your time. I just want to get us the fastest way to the best answer.
How do you pick your writers?
It's a lot of it is how are they in the room? How are they together? How do their minds work? Um, it's less about funnily enough, it's less about how are they on the page, right? Because the reality of what a television writing job is, and I've done it. You're hired to write in your boss's voice,
Yeah.
right? You're not hired to be yourself as a writer. You're hired to try to emulate your boss as a writer. And the reality is, so you're not hired to write an episode. You're hired to write a draft, the best draft that you can write that will be easy for me to rewrite,
Hmm.
right? So the first thing that you have to look for is like who's got a big ego, who's going to be offended by the fact that I'm rewriting them. When the reality is like I'm always going to rewrite. The showrunner's always going to rewrite because it has to be my sensibility and my voice. And that when I worked on Bones in that first year, the best compliment that I got was Hart Hanson telling me that I was a pleasure to rewrite. Right? That meant that I delivered him a draft
Hmm.
that worked fundamentally story wise, right? And that each scene had fun to it that got his mind going, right? It wasn't a drag where he's like, "Oh God, I got to start all over
Yeah.
again."
Yeah.
And that's really what the job is. So, when you're putting together a room, I'm looking for, who's good in the room, who thinks about character more than plot, who thinks about theme, and do they all fit together? Because, you have to cast a room the way you cast a show. You might meet with two writers and you think, well, this person's great and this person's great, but you can't put these two people in a room together, right?
That makes a lot of sense. So I want to talk about Alien Earth. Why did you take on the project, and what is your personal connection to the Alien franchise?
Well, I mean, my personal connection is the same as many people's, right? Which is that I saw it probably too young,
Yep.
and and but it's a really fascinating movie to think about analytically because you go back and you think about how most horror is built, right? You think about The Shining, where you start with that score and then that drone shot. And from the very first moment, you're like, oh no, this isn't, something's wrong, right? But then you think about Alien, where it's like you don't have any of that. You have the ship, and they wake up, and they're having breakfast, and they're smoking, and they're talking over each other. And for about 30 minutes, it's just mundane,
Hmm.
right? There's no dread at all. And it was the first science fiction story that was just space truckers, right? And so you basically felt like, oh, this is weird. I mean, the last big sci-fi movie I saw was Star Wars, right? So here I am with Alien, and you're like, they're space truckers, and they're basically talking about how they're getting ripped off by this corporation, and then slowly but surely it builds into this horror movie, and so it really bypasses those centers of your brain that are prepared for what's going to come at you, right? So, so why to take it on was because it's not just a monster movie, right? There are these themes in it about human nature, about capitalism, about technology that are, have not been fully explored within the film franchise itself because an alien film is a 2-hour survival story, right? It's not a meditation on capitalism, right? It's not a meditation on the existential crisis of being an individual, in a nameless, faceless system.
I actually took a look at the Alien script for personal reasons. I was just kind of interested in it a while ago. And it is remarkable how little dialogue there is in
Yeah,
the back half of the movie. Um,
right.
how did you, I mean, is that something that stayed in the show? Like, how did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a novelist. I love writing dialogue as much as anyone, but I'm also a filmmaker, and nothing makes me happier than long sequences in which the camera is doing the storytelling and the actors are doing the storytelling. And so, yeah, I feel like we have several sequences which build in that way where the words stop mattering. I mean, when you're running from the tiger, there's
Hmm.
nothing you can say,
Yeah.
right, that's going to help you in this situation. So, um, and I also think that part of my job as a filmmaker is to create a state of mind that you're watching it in, the way that Ridley Scott created a state of mind in Alien by lulling you, right, over
Yep.
30 or
Yep.
40 minutes into this sense of like you just enter your mind enters this sort of resting state that then you know
Yeah. Until that
you
alien
come
comes
out
out of the
of.
chest. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
you know, Fargo also built off a, very iconic movie. Are you, I guess it's like two questions, which is one, do you get nervous? And two, how do you think about sort of putting your own spin on something that people already like really know, if that makes sense?
um yeah, I should get nervous, right? I think I
It's
should
also
get
kind of fun,
nervous.
right?
Well, it's exciting. I mean, I've thought about from my earliest days as a writer that my work is in conversation with all the work that I've loved and that's inspired me, right? So, I said in the acknowledgments of my first book, like, if if literature is a dialogue between writers, then here's my first contribution, right? And so what I what I did with Fargo was I felt like I was having a conversation with the Coen brothers through cinema, right? And here it's like James Cameron and Ridley Scott and David Fincher and all these and Janae, all these filmmakers who've made these amazing movies, that really excited and inspired me. Here's my contribution, right? What do you think of this? Like, so it's less like, oh, I'm going to be judged against these amazing filmmakers and more like I just want to play, right? Where I'm playing with them.
Do you have you spoken to the Coen brothers about Fargo? You know what I mean?
Oh
Like, what
yeah.
does that, do
Yeah, I mean,
they, yeah.
I met with them, they read the first script. They were already attached to the project and they had said, if we like a script, you can put our names on it, and if not, you know where to send the check. And 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 then yeah, I met with them. I've had a few meals with them over the years, and every once in a while, when I start another one, I always reach out, and they basically say, "You're still making that thing," and um, they said to me early on that this isn't a medium television that they understand really, and I do clearly, and they felt like I had the voice, and so go do my thing. And it must be weird for them to be walking around New York every 3 or 4 years and see suddenly Fargo billboards are everywhere, right? And subway signs, etc., for this movie they made 40 years ago, right? But they've been very generous with me. But they don't really have a role to play, and so I don't talk to them that often.
When it came to Alien, did you have other projects on the table? Were you like, this is immediately the thing I want to do next? Like, what was that process like?
Well, Alien was a long development process that started, you know, for me originally in 2018 or 2019, and then got really going in 21. So, I when we got on the runway, we were originally going to make a TV pilot because it was a recurring series, but then they realized what the price tag would be, and so they said, well, great. So you're going to series, and but let's write all the episodes, and then we'll budget it, et cetera. And I realized that, I mean, Fargo had been on the air. Fargo 4 had been on the air in 2020, and when I realized that I couldn't get this to air before 24 or 25, I was like, well, I can't be off the air for 4 or
Yeah.
5 years. So, I basically squeezed in the fifth season of Fargo. It delayed Alien a little bit, but it allowed me to not disappear from the world. Um, and and then after that was done, then I launched into making this. But it's been a long journey for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the fact that, Alien Earth, talks about the sort of fusion is the wrong word, but humans and technology, right? And we live, I think it's fair to say, in a tech oligarchy, in your industry, certainly in mine. AI, use of generative AI is something we talk about all the time. How did you think about weaving in storytelling and the kind of social political issues that you think about and maybe in the time that we're living in?
I mean, the way that my mind works is if you ask me to tell a story about the future, my first thought is, well, what are stories going to be like in the future,
Yeah.
right? And so the first thing I did when we said, well, let's set it on Earth. It's alien. It's on Earth. It's 100 years from now. Let's say. I thought, well, all right. Well, so what is Earth 100 years from now, right? And how does that fit into this larger story? And I thought about a moment in history like the turn of the century, 1900, where you had Tesla and Westinghouse and Edison, and they're all fighting for who's going to control electricity. And I thought, well, that's a very specific way in, and knowing that Alien is a franchise that revolves around a corporation, right? Then we can fit Whale and Yutani into that world, that there's a competition right now. And so what is that competition for? And my thought was, well, it's for the future of humanity. It's for immortality. It's for what's next. Is it neuro implants that enhance our physiognomy, or is it AI that's gonna win out over humanity, or is it this idea of transhumanism, of human consciousness in a synthetic body, and the idea that you have multiple corporations all who all lean toward monopoly, who are trying to win this race. And I thought, well, that is a show, right? Take the aliens out of it. That's a
Yeah.
really fascinating show. And then how do we use the aliens now to enhance that show?
Yeah. That's a show that arguably we're in right now, but
Right.
certainly will be more
We're
advanced
all
100
watching it.
years from now. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have a kind of speed round to end this. So the first one is, what kind of project do you want to tackle next?
In a speed round.
Yeah.
Western.
Western? Um
Sure.
what is your dream movie or book or IP to adapt?
Something by an author that I love, that allows me the chance to get to know them better, right? It's a kind of backdoor way into meeting my idols.
Who's the author?
Oh no, I'm just saying there's so many authors.
Yeah, yeah, but give me a
Yeah.
few.
Well, I did an adaptation with Don DeLillo at one point that we couldn't get to the screen, but allowed me to build a relationship with him that was great. I mean, who else? There's so many.
What are you watching right now?
I'm watching the Billy Joel documentary right now on HBO
I
Max.
would not have expected that.
I mean, it's a good story. It's a good story. He wrote a lot of catchy songs, and I grew up in the '80s, so why not?
Yeah. Last great movie you saw.
I thought 28 Years Later was really great.
Oh, me too. I love that
Yeah,
franchise.
I thought it was
Um,
really great.
I have one, but I know it's kind of hard. Um,
Okay.
favorite piece of media about Texas.
Oh, favorite piece of media about Texas. There was something I saw about a tug of war that they had in the '80s between the south side of the river and the north side of the river. That was like a news report from the '80s that seemed like to really sum up Austin for me, right? You got the south side of the river and the north side of the river and a big rope, and they just had a big tug of war, and that's Austin.
Oh, a literal tug of war. I thought
A
this was
literal
like a
tug of war. No,
metaphorical
no.
tug
This
of
was
war.
this was a big rope. This was a lot of barbecue, and I forget which side won.
I love
but it was
that.
super fun. Yeah.
Well, Noah, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
All right. Well, thank you so much.